It's the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name is George Cooper and welcome to the show. What a result. After a disappointing week, Fulham bounced back with arguably the performance of the season against league leaders Liverpool, handing the Reds only their second away defeat of the season and their first defeat in 7 months. Unbelievable. After falling behind through a mandatory Liverpool banger, 3 goals in 15 minutes, blew our opponents away in the first half, and then we had the strength to hold them off until Luis Diaz's goal made for a very nervy final spell, but we heard out. Standout performances from Muniz, Iwobi and Bassi stole the headlines, but make no mistake, this was an outstanding team performance and one that should fill us with confidence going into the business end of the season as we charge down on those European spaces. How big is that Bournemouth game looking right now? Joining me today is Mr. Drew Heatley. How you doing, mate?
Hello, Coops. Yeah, it's a little peek behind the curtain. When Elizabeth comes in and sort of books you for the pod and says, do you fancy doing Liverpool? You just think, it's a bit of a hospital pass. But then, so you're not really expecting anything. So it's a joy to rock up today talking about what happened yesterday.
Yeah, it's good. You wake up on a Monday morning and you think, okay, start of the week, let's see what we've got. And then you just suddenly remember that we beat Liverpool yesterday. You're like, you just got like a spring in your step. But no, it's one that I've been looking forward to. The sort of jubilant post-big win podcast is one that, everyone loves, you know what I'm saying. Also with us today is Mr. Luke Resch. How are you doing? This is only your second appearance on the pod and you were coming off the win last time as well, weren't you?
I know. United away at Old Trafford and now Liverpool at home. So yeah,
massive.
Still on the cloud 9 high. I don't watch other games. I just the ones I do the podcast for. So I imagine we've won the rest of the games in between as well, and we're in a Wembley semi-final, right?
Yeah, let's go with that. And also making his pod debut, we've been wanting to get you on for a long, long time, so it's great to have you with us today, is Mr. Piers Cottee-Jones. How you doing?
Very well, thank you very much for getting me on. And yeah, it's funny you talk about hospital passes, Drew, because I thought that's exactly what this is. We're going to lose 3 on the trot. All the bigwigs have gone away, and I was expecting to get told to not jump on today, so I'd turned my phone off for the last day. So if someone has messaged, if Sammy is trying to get back on, sorry, pal.
Make way for Piers. A new era is upon us. But introduce yourself to listeners a little bit. How long? I see you on away days quite frequently, and we've always, as I said, been wanting to get you on for quite some time because you do Fulham home and away, sort of diehard supporter. Sort of, what's your background?
Yeah, a lot of games. We've got a little competition between our pals of end of season awards, who's done the most, the least. And I got to 32 games last year, which also means I'm the most single of all the people in our friendship group. There's a direct correlation between the two. But yeah, it's been a great season so far. It's been lovely. Been a supporter for a long time since my pal Toby Toller took me to a game, my third ever game when I was about 15. And since then, caught the bug. Schwartz saved a penalty at the end. What more could you want in life? So it's been lovely. I actually got called an archetypal Fulham fan on a 5 Live thing a couple of weeks ago. That's a badge I wear with pride now.
Is there, when that label comes out, it's sort of laced with a bit of a, it's a backhanded compliment, I would say, but it's great to have you on board. Anyway, should we go on to the game? Let's go on to the game because it was just unbelievable. And Drew, you've got some 3-word reviews, have you not? Would you mind kicking us off, please?
Yeah, sure. I went to X first, as is the habit, and I must say they got up their game because there wasn't much on there. So I've got 2 from X, and then I'll move on to Insta. So we've got Jimmy Be Good, Craven Cottager 9 with classy Calvin Bassi, which I would like to think is a play on old wrestling manager from the 50s, classy Freddie Blassie, but maybe not. I've got Mike Levy here with Scousing Out Europe, which I really enjoy.
That's good.
And I popped over to, it is good. I popped over to Insta and we've got Kieran O'Leary with Bounce Back FC after the Palace game and obviously Arsenal in between. And then Hussein Musa with Passport is Confused, which I think is something that we can all agree with.
It's the age-old thing with Fulhamish this year, isn't it? And I'm sure we'll come on to it later on, but the old will we, won't we debate. But let's start with our opening spells with this Liverpool game, Luke. I mean, we stuck with 4 at the back, Bassi coming back in. We had AP obviously starting in the 10. And I think we made it very clear from the first whistle that we were not going to sit back on this one. We were up in Liverpool's faces, we were pressing, and we were very nearly rewarded with a penalty in the opening 4 minutes when, AP had a clash, as did Muniz with Virgil van Dijk. It got overruled by VAR. It wasn't a penalty, and that was the decision that got stuck with. But looking back on the replays, do you think that potentially we had a claim there?
I just think if that's at the other end and that's Diogo Jota that goes down, Chris Kavanagh's given that before his body hits the floor. So I absolutely think there's at least one penalty there, probably two. You know, like there's two fouls that could be a penalty. And VAR have decided that neither of them are given. I'm not surprised because it's us playing Liverpool, who are first in the league. It's the age-old conundrum of VAR was brought in to be more objective, and yet the big clubs still get these calls their way. So I wasn't surprised. And, you know, we've won it now. So we can kind of look back on it and be like, oh, it's all right. We didn't need that. But it was definitely a penalty, in my eyes anyway.
Piers, do you agree? I mean, Marco Silva on the sidelines was fuming. You know, it looked like potential calm down, mate. You could get sent off here. But he was absolutely incensed. And do you share Luke's opinion that we were really hard done by with that call?
Yeah, it's a sad bit of nostalgia watching Marco getting incensed at Kavanagh, but I think we were hard done by it, and the Pereira bit I think is a penalty. There's a real issue I think where goalkeepers get a lot of protection where they don't necessarily deserve it. If he's through on goal for a one-on-one and Kelleher does exactly that, that's a penalty all day long. So the fact that it's a pass, I don't see a difference between the two. He's still fouled Pereira. Initially, I thought that Van Dijk had fouled Muniz, but watching it back, mainly I thought that because he was holding his face so much. And I feel like the more a defender feigns injury, the more they think they're in trouble. But watching it back, I can see how that is two coming at the same time. But for me, there's already a penalty in that move anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good opening spell. You know, we were definitely the better of the two sides. But Drew, as happens so often when we play Liverpool, there's the sort of mandatory screamer that they always seem to pull out the bag. It's just they only ever score these sort of worldies against us. But, you know, after that goes in, were you thinking, oh, this is, you know, rinse and repeat, it's going to happen again? You know, Fulham putting a really good showing for ourselves, but ultimately falling foul of just moments of brilliance. And I mean, I have to say, it was one of those goals from Allister where you just got to take your hat off and think, no, that was an absolute rocket.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously Liverpool Screamers FC, but also Allister in particular. So, and I think as well, after the two previous games, I think what makes it all the more amazing that we did come back is that, you know, my head certainly dropped after that. You just think, well, as you say, a positive sort of early going, sort of quelled by the goal by the visitors, and then that's all she wrote. But it was fantastic that we managed to, from that point, even pick ourselves up, and we'll go into that in a great bit of detail. But yeah, it was a tough start, and it knocked the wind out of certainly my lungs, but not the players. So fantastic in that regard.
Piers, what did you make of the atmosphere at Craven Cottage? Because going into it, you know, sun was out, everyone felt up for it after what was a disappointing week. And I mean, I think Fulham fans put in a really good showing for themselves up against Liverpool, who are obviously always noisy and, as expected, were permeated throughout the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of chatter historically about Fulham fans not quite being present at home games. And I think as we've all been to a lot of away games, it's just a thing in football now that home grounds aren't quite as animated as they once were. We've seen Marco asking for more from the crowd, and we really brought it at the start of that Liverpool game. We were buzzing. We were up for it as a crowd. You saw the players up for it as well. And then the classic, they score a goal. It starts dipping. But what I found really interesting is there were so many Liverpool fans in the away end. And I don't have an issue with away fans in a home end as long as you're respectful of the fact you are an away fan in a home end. If you're not respectful of that and they're getting up celebrating goals like a number of them were, that got the whole crowd absolutely riled up, screaming at stewards to get them out, and a number of Liverpool fans dotted throughout all the stands were then being kicked out. What that did for us, though, is that dip we had post-goal turned into blood being bayed for from all the home fans, and that then turned into the home fans being even more animated than we were before. And there's only one thing on earth that could have made us even louder in that moment, and that was a Ryan Sessegnon goal, exactly what we got. So thank you to all the Liverpool fans who kindly put money into the Ali Mack pocket, as well as getting themselves kicked out, because that's made the atmosphere even better than it was before the goal.
It's not often that we're thanking away supporters for finding their way in, but, you know, it really went in our favour yesterday. Can't argue much with that. So thank you to all the Scousers who we get Chelsea
fans in the home end for that game. That'd be great as well.
the goal was somewhat unexpected, but what I can tell you was unexpected was the response that we got from Fulham, Luke. I mean, wow, it was 3 goals in 15 minutes, kicked off with that goal from Sess. I mean, incredible. Berger, who was shrugged off by McAllister in the build-up to the goal, then made amends with this amazing surging run from deep. Finds AP on the right, ball in. Cottee-Jones with a beautiful layoff, it has to be said, for Sess. But then how many times have we seen it? This man in the right place at the right time. And he was starting on the right, which there's been a lot of calls for amongst the Fulham community. And do you think, he's really making a big claim for a starting position in the attack?
Absolutely. He gives us that dynamic that I think we look back at some games and think, oh, we're a bit toothless up front. We run out of options. We've even said sometimes when we see Iwobi trying to run in behind, we might as well all go home. There's nothing there. He's so dynamic. And I think we've seen in countless games against Liverpool in the last few seasons that their attacking play opens them up at the back for us. And that's something we've exploited in a lot of games against them. And having him running into those areas, as he naturally does so well, I wasn't surprised when he put that in the back of the net.
Piers, what was your sort of take on Sess and where he's finding his position within this team? Because there's been so many question marks over the weeks of where his best position is, and we've seen him utilise obviously left back, on the left wing, on the right wing. If it was down to you and your Marco Silva, where does Sess fit?
Boy wonder is a winger. The prodigal son plays as a winger. He's not a wing back. He's not a full back. He's none of these things. He's so good going forward. For me, one of his amazing attributes is having that somehow skill fluke instinct to be in the right place at the right time and just to sniff out chances and goals. He can't do that full back. There's no point having him there. And that for me was the big disappointment of his time at Spurs, because they were just determined to make him a full back, going away from all his best characteristics. And that for me is why it's so exciting seeing Marco pushing him up the field. And I actually think Marco did a really clever bit of pre-match press conferences where he was asked about his position and he was like, oh yeah, he's a full back, he's a wing back, played him down as a winger a little bit, knowing full well he's coming on as right wing to start the game. So I'm really thrilled from starting there, because it's been long overdue, and long may it continue, and long may he find that real buzz and instinct back moment after moment, minute after minute, with all that confidence coming back.
Well, this is exactly what we were hoping for 6 years ago, isn't it? Just Sess fit and firing, and with the bit between his teeth in the Premier League. It's not just we've got him back, and now he's sort of working his way back into the team. He is now back in, and he's as he said, he's rearing and ready to go. And this is exactly what we've been hoping for such a long time. And to come at this point in the season where I think, we're still reeling from throwing away the chance at FA Cup glory, but now everything's focused on these next 7 games and that chance to get into that top 8. And we've got him at this perfect time, fit and firing and ready to go. So, I mean, I think, if we have that game against Bournemouth in a week's time and he's not starting again, then I think we've got a serious problem.
It was great to see Sess interviewed after on Match of the Day 2, where the reporter sort of took that to him and said, you're finding your goal scoring feat again. You got 25 goals in your last spell at Fulham. Do you feel like you're rediscovering that touch? And he was like, yeah, it's down to Marco having faith in me. And at Spurs, primarily plays as a defender, but I'm really enjoying the sort of new role that I found myself in. Really interesting bit of point that I heard in the commentary during the game was that Sess actually warmed up with defence before this match, and then halfway through the warm up, he then joins the front, the forwards, and it is potentially a little sleight of hand there from Marco, because he just kept Liverpool on their toes, and also in the coverage I was watching, they had a back 5 with Sess playing, as a fullback. So maybe just Marco throwing a honest lot little off the scent.
You can only do that once, though, can't you? So, if that's the truth, he's done that well, but that you only get to play that card once.
Yeah, very, very smart. Or who knows, maybe it was just a coincidence. Anyway, we didn't have to wait long for the second goal. I joked that Cottee-Jones set up Sess very nicely for the first, but it was Robertson whose turn it was to turn the provider for us for the second. I mean, Drew, really uncharacteristic mistakes from Liverpool. Obviously, we're not complaining, but I mean, that is a really, really, really big mistake from the Liverpool left back.
well, when you're playing a Liverpool side that's not lost in 26 or 27 games, or whatever it was, you have to rely on those mistakes to be able to get a result. But there's one thing having those mistakes presented to you, but as we know, it's just as easy to fluff those opportunities when they're laid on a plate for you. But luckily yesterday, there might have been more than the usual fair share of errors, but we certainly capitalised on them. Exactly the way that we should have done, and I'm delighted for Iwobi as well, because he's had a tough start to the calendar year after a really sort of exciting start to the season. And that's not to say he's been terrible since Christmas at all, but he's been knackered because he's been flogged because we haven't got anyone comparable in his position at the moment. So we really needed him to keep pushing on and keep playing. So to see him sort of get a goal to his name and have a really good first half performance, if it wasn't, might not have been his best performance of the season by any stretch, but he's that's only going to breed confidence back in Alex. And I think he's such a important player on and off the pitch for us as a club, certainly this season. So I'm delighted to see him get that goal. And I think it's a bit churlish for some people to talk about it going in off Robertson, because that was already going in anyway. So fair play to Alex for that.
Yeah, it was a real stinker from Robertson, giving it away and then having the ball deflect off him to go into the back of the net. But Luke, just want to get your opinion on Iwobi. He's currently on 8 goals, 5 assists for the season. And I just don't know. Do you feel like, I know obviously Drew mentioned it just now, he's been flogged and he's feeling tired, but I do think yesterday was a very good performance from him. Do you think he could potentially get the sort of magical 10 and 10?
Well, if Rodrigo Muniz can create air shots like the one that Iwobi had for that assist he got yesterday into goals, then there's no reason he can't get to 10 and 10. That touch from Muniz was unreal. I think, again, like we've said, it's been some of that stuff in the 10, I wonder, with Pereira and Smith Rowe this season looking quite toothless. I think if we'd have had players offering more goals in that position, he'd probably have more assists. And if he's already on 8 goals, it's not many, of them to get to 10. So I think if we had more clinical 10s playing for us, I think he'd be right up there in terms of reaching that figure this season. I could see it.
You mentioned the assist for Muniz's goal. Let's come on to it, Piers, because possibly one of the funniest assists I've ever seen. It reminded me of, do you remember when John Pansel played for us? He had that trick in his Arsenal where he would just boot the ball as high as he possibly could in order to sort of give himself a bit of time. But it kind of felt a little bit like that. But it was a very strange, can you call it a corner routine? But you see it go up in the air from Iwobi and you think, oh, Van Dijk is just going to absolutely gobble this up. But Muniz just pulls out the most magnificent Dennis Bergkamp-esque touch to spin him away. I mean, it was a thing of beauty. But I mean, yeah, do you feel like that assist was meant from Iwobi, or was it just a hit and hope, or even a spoon? I don't know what it was, but it's very effective, whatever happened.
I'm pretty sure I saw the codes in the exact places on one of the training videos. Yeah, it's definitely a long time. It's a masterful piece of play. But yeah, Putney Pele perfection. Hey, it was phenomenal from Muniz. A kind of touch you see from Berbatov and not many other people able to do that. But it also shows how far Muniz has come from the kid who started, the kid who went out to Borough and didn't go so well, to the strong, powerful, streetwise person he is now as well. He bullied Konate and Van Dijk all game. You see Van Dijk getting flustered in a match to our young Brazilian striker, and it was phenomenal to see, and he absolutely deserved that goal. I do wonder if Alisson plays. Kelleher's a phenomenal keeper, make no mistake, and has done phenomenally well for them. But you do wonder if Alisson plays, does he get his left boot on that or not? Having said that, he didn't play. Oh well, go Muniz.
It's the type of hook that wouldn't be out of place on the lakes where when he's fishing, isn't it? It was so good, and I think there was a couple of years, I think it was our first game back in the Premier League, where Van Dijk just had an awful afternoon with Mitrovic all afternoon, and he's come back, and the student has become the master, and it's happened again, and that's a testament to the player that Muniz is becoming in front of our eyes. And I said it at the Fulhamish Live the other week, it's happening. His development is happening at such a rapid pace that you almost sort of take it for granted just how much he is improving. And now, after this season, I think we're looking at one of the best strikers in the Premier League in current form. And I just think it's delightful to see, because he's another one who's like Iwobi, just really positive influence on and off the pitch for the club. And I think as long as we can keep players like that in that locker room, I think the sky's the limit for what they can achieve together.
You said on the Fulhamish live show that you can see him going for a big money move. He's improving so much, but you see moments like that and that touch, and you just think, okay, right, we've got a real player on our hands here. But do you think it's now almost going now, Drew, that if it carries on much further, we're going to struggle to keep hold of him?
Yeah, I mean, that is the danger, isn't it? And there's talk about contracts and whatnot going on, and I think it should be an absolute priority, because we caught lightning in the bottle with Mitrovic, and that's been well documented. But to have a player like Muniz come in and be coached by Silva and turn into the player that he's becoming, and it's not just his power, it's his intelligence and those moves like that hook and these ideas that he has. You can see he's a real striker now, and to be able to have him fall into our laps and develop in the way that we have, I think it's got to be a priority to keep him. But obviously, the more he scores, the more people's heads are going to be turned and people are going to be aware of him. But I often refer to him as Premier League box office, because he really is. He knows exactly what makes a real character in this league, and that intangible as well only just adds to the interest in him. So I think tying him down has got to be one of the biggest tasks of the summer.
I wholeheartedly agree with you there, Drew, and I would like to see Muniz remain in a Fulham shirt for as long as humanly possible, irrespective of his performances. He's just good character to have around, as you alluded to there. Luke, we managed to hold on to our 2-goal cushion right up until the 72nd minute. Luis Diaz pulled one back to set up a very nervous final spell. I mean, it was pretty cheaply given away by a throw-in. I think it was a wayward pass from Lukic. But, I mean, how were you feeling after that goal went in? Was it a case of, oh, here we go again, this is going to be hell, incoming 4-3 Liverpool victory?
Yeah. Was it Anfield last season, wasn't it? We were 3-2 up in the 86th minute and we still managed to lose that game. So we have had so many games against Liverpool in the past 3 seasons where we've competed well, where we've been in it, and then they've just kind of either got a late equaliser or late winners. So I was like, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again. We can never finish these bums off. Like earlier in the season, Robertson gets sent off. We're ahead 11v10 and we still don't win that game. So I thought, oh no. And then spaghetti head, noodle head, whatever you want to call him, comes on, and you just think the script is written for him to make equaliser. And thankfully he doesn't. But yeah, I've got to admit, at that moment, I thought there's, if there's a 6th goal, and there probably will be, it's going to go Liverpool's way. I was not feeling confident.
Piers, I mean, fantastic nickname there, Noodlehead. I assume you're talking about our former winger protege, Harvey Elliott. I mean, him coming on, you as you said, you felt like the script was being written, and I think I speak for everyone. We say, like, my heart was in my mouth when that ball rattled the crossbar, and you're just thinking, oh no. I mean, what did you make of the reception that he got yesterday? Because it was frosty, to say the least.
Yeah, I think he's probably quite used to having those receptions. And it's one of those where I think the more it happens, the more he kind of is determined to prove us wrong. He is so ready he's planned whatever it is, if he does score, it's going to be massive, and there's going to be right stand, and the stand's going to sink into the Thames. We're going to be jumping around so much, it's going to be carnage. But thankfully, he didn't score. Sorry, Harvey. Try again next time, Noodle. But yeah, it was a heart and mouth moment, I think, for everyone, because it's just the only player you do not want to be scoring that goal. Should have probably actually scored that goal. He got right round it, and if only he'd stayed at Motspur Park a bit longer, maybe his technique would have been even better and he would have slotted it.
It's true though, isn't it? Because there are certain players that, you can, the crowd, you're like, okay, we can get in their head a little bit, their heads drop and then they get frustrated and stuff. But Harvey Elliott strikes me as a sort of player who like really thrives off the sort of like being that pantomime villain. So you're always a bit like, oh, do we really want to wind him up? I remember when Liverpool visited a number of years ago, and Daniel Sturridge got a hat trick, and he was getting a lot of stick for being a Chelsea reject, and then stuck 3 past us. We were like, oh, that really did not go to plan. But thankfully, yeah, Harvey Elliott was kept at arm's length. Drew, I just want to talk about like Fulham's defensive performance as a whole. You know, watching Match of the Day 2 yesterday, Bassey understandably came under a lot of praise, but I think just like even as a unit, back four were pretty faultless by and large. And what did you make of our defensive display?
Yeah, I think it was one of the best of the season. I think, it's funny to say that when you conceded 2, but, I think Bassey and Anderson in particular both played their roles perfectly. And it just shows like what is possible for us when we have both of those firing, because I think Bassey in particular has had a fantastic season. He's in contention for player of the season without a doubt, but Anderson's obviously had his fair share of critics for not really hitting the heights of what we expected for the money that we paid for him back in the summer to come back. But I think yesterday they were both on the money, which was fantastic to see, and if that can sort of continue, that's fantastic. And Timmy Castagna, I think, had a bit of a tough time coming in for Kenny Tete, and I think it's never easy to try and be played into form because you've got no one else to take over your spot if you are struggling. And I think the emergence of Tete on the bench, a wild Tete re-emerges. I think that sort of maybe played a factor in Castagna trying to put in a bit more of a performance to keep his place. And Robertson, isn't he? He's had his critics in the past, but now I think he's reached this sort of utopia where we all realise just how sort of good he is and how much he's improved as well. And I think we're also realising that we're probably seeing the last sort of half dozen games of him in a Fulham shirt. So, I think people are just enjoying it a bit more and laying off the criticism, because he's definitely been one to have, been beaten with the stick a little bit by the fans. But yeah, it was great performance yesterday, all over the pitch, really, one of the best ones. And I think, it sticks in the craw a little bit that it happens this weekend and not the one before when it really mattered. But, as I said, like all thoughts are now turning to this race for Europe and the race for the top 8, and we have to try and put the FA Cup behind us. But personally for me, it does stick in the craw a bit. But we'll move on a happy occasion like this.
Yeah, it's all done, said and done now, and I feel like the only thing to do now is to focus on that European push through. But I do totally feel where you're coming from. I mean, Luke, historically, 61 points is always enough to guarantee European football. Fulham aren't all that far off, but I mean, just how big is this Bournemouth game now? Because it feels pretty massive. If we're to win that, then there's a 4-point cushion between us and the Cherries. But it's so nice to go into these games at this start of the season with that feeling of excitement, and there's something riding on each game now. And do you expect Fulham to push on and ultimately deliver?
Do I expect? I think you're right. This is a great result ahead of, I think, probably the next 3 season defining in that sense. I think we've got to get 6 points looking at the next 3 games. Who is it? Bournemouth, Chelsea. But I think, this one is so key, and it's that consistency piece now that we've struggled with all season, stringing some results together. You looked at Newcastle earlier in the season when they put, 4 wins together, and that shot them up the league. If we can just get 7 points from these next 3 games, that is absolutely massive for us. As you say, it would be great to try and get just up to 6th or 7th, so that on a match day, if we lose one, we're not dropping down to 9th or 10th, but we're still able to be there in that kind of top 8, really asking for some kind of European football come the end of the season.
So it's really head scratching. I mean, like we've covered it a lot that Fulham tend to struggle against teams that set up with a bit of a low block, which generally are the teams that are sort of below us in the league. But Piers, against the top 6 sides, Fulham have 6 wins in 10 games against the top 6. We're talking like not historical top 6, the current top 6, which is higher than any other team in the league, even Liverpool. So Fulham have a better record against the top 6 sides than Liverpool do. No, I don't understand where this is coming from, and I don't know whether that fills me with confidence or trepidation looking at our running, because we are playing some of those teams. But yeah, we're a real enigma of a side, because also we've dropped 22 points from winning positions this year, so only Southampton have more. So we're just like nobody really knows where to put us, and it makes us unpredictable. But where's your head at? Are you feeling optimistic, or do you think that ultimately we're going to run out of gas here?
I think what's so fascinating is the swing, but even before the Liverpool game kicked off, after the Arsenal game, we all thought, right, 2 out of 2, we're going to lose against Liverpool again on the weekend. It's going to be a really tricky bit. Then pretty much every result we needed to go correctly in 2 essentially rounds of games went in our favour. And suddenly we're right back in the mix. We're back in the conversation. We have the performance like we had yesterday. Bournemouth starting to trail off a bit. Suddenly that's not as daunting a place as it has been for the rest of this season. Still a phenomenally hard game, and we're going to have to be on great form to get anything from it. But I think we do prefer playing these top sides. If we want 7 cup finals, let's have 7 cup final worthy sides, and I think we've got that. It's going to have to show a different side of us. And if you look at us at Arsenal, with 5 at the back, we weren't quite as front foot, not as aggressive, versus when we swapped to the 4, we're chasing a game, so we're going to be slightly different anyway. But suddenly we're front foot, we're creating chances, and we're playing in that way that we know when we're at our best. So I'm really hoping that we can just keep at that best level on that front foot. But if you also look at the games that the others have still to go, Aston Villa are fighting on 3 fronts still, even though they're above us and look quite safe, and they've made some great January additions. They're going to need every single one of those players in this run-in. Bournemouth, their form's dipping a bit. It's a huge game on Monday. That's can't be understated enough. Brighton, I think, are a bit like us this season, where you don't quite know who you're going to get out of them. So of the team sort of closest to us, it's a real lottery of what's going to happen. And I think in a way it probably is better we're playing those top sides based on how we've gone this season.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. That's certainly for sure. Drew, before we wrap up this section, we've spoken about obviously Bassi. We've talking at length about Muniz and how good those two were this match. Are there any other performances for you that really stood out in this? What will be a very memorable victory?
I mean, again, another shout out to Sess. I think he's going to be vital when we're playing these last 7 games. Obviously, 4 of those 7 are against teams in the top half of the table. So I think having somebody who can and change a game and unlock that when things are getting a little bit tough, I think that, seeing him this weekend was sort of a fantastic thing to see. So I'm very pleased about that. Defense, again, going back to a back 4, I don't want to really see that back 5 again, because I think yesterday we saw, look, we can set up against these sides and do really well with a 4. So that's really good. Quite pleased about that. Another really good performance from Pereira as well. I think he pulls it out of the bag when we're playing these teams, these top sides. Talking about top sides in the traditional sense, I guess he loves playing against, the Uniteds and the Liverpools for different reasons. So, yeah, I think it was probably one of our best performances, if not the best performance of the season yesterday. And there was many players sort of you could single out for praise, but those are definitely the ones that I would do so for.
Yeah, I'd also like to give a shout out to Leno, who I thought made some very, very key stops and sort of kept us in it. It's just every year that goes by that we get to watch him I think it's becoming more apparent that we've got ourselves like a world-class keeper, and he kept us in it. And especially that save of the Harvey Elliott, how many times have we seen him pop up with those kind of goals right at the end? So that was a real heart in the mouth moment. But yeah, and we said after the the disappointing defeat after we went out of the FA Cup that you're looking at the fixture list, like Fulham have already had so many iconic victories this season. Luke, we're talking the Chelsea game, the Brentford game, the Manchester United game in the Cup, and like where does this Liverpool victory sit in the sort of how we're going to look back upon this season for you?
I guess that depends on where we finish the season. In some ways, I think like loads of these results are really special, but some of them I think are if we finish in Europe, I'd look at this one as one of those defining moments of the season. Whereas if we, for whatever reason, missed out on Europe, I think the Brentford game, the Chelsea game, they're still such big moments for us as fans. They're the games that we live for. They're the games that the players rightfully get up for, that we can talk about with our mates, if we can call them that support Brentford for the next 20 years and say, yeah, you thought you had us beat, and then Harry Wilson popped up with 2 bits of magic in 5 minutes and told you where to go, as Gentleman Jim said. So I think this one is significant if we get Europe, whereas I think some of those other ones are still probably a bit more special for me just because of what it means being a Fulham fan in West London.
Yeah, and Piers, we've got Chelsea still to play at home, Brentford to play away, got Manchester City in the last game of the season. There's at least one more historic win there, right? Surely, at the very least.
Could that City game be a 6-pointer to decide Europe, a final shootout between us and City? Probably not, but you never know. But yeah, it's a phenomenal set of huge, vital games to go. The Chelsea one probably won't decide if they get the Champions League, but may well if their form continues with their Conference League side going out every other week. And that's a huge game for us. If we do the double over them, that's a lovely time to be a Fulham fan. And as Luke says, there have been so many key moments already this season that either way, I think the joyful thing is if we don't get a European place, we'll be disappointed. But then again, once we get through that, we can look back at all these phenomenal times and moments and be so thankful for them all. And that's something that we should always keep in our minds as we cry into our passports.
we have this mad situation where we could quite easily beat our, well, I think it's pretty much obvious we're going to beat our points total. We're going to beat our 15 wins in the Premier League season unless it all goes completely pear-shaped in the next 7 games. And we could miss out on Europe in what is one of the most sort of open races for European qualification for many years. And then it's like, how do you judge the season? Because I actually have no idea how I would judge that. You know, it's, on one side you've got records tumbling, on another side you've got absolutely nothing to show for it. So it just shows that the next 7 games, there is so much riding on it. And, you know, whether we think we're ready for Europe or not, like, I think we have to grab it, because otherwise, you know, what are the 38 games for?
Yeah, we're going to look ahead to the upcoming fixtures in part 2 when we cover some of your questions. Be right back. Welcome back. It's Fulhamish Podcast. George here. I'm joined by Drew, Luke and Piers. Thank you to everyone who got in touch and taking these questions from X. I mean, Drew, you just sort of alluded to the fact that the points record is going to be broken this year. We've got a question here from Chris who asks a question to that point. Points record surely going to be broken this season, right? You're confident of this happening then?
Yeah, I mean, you would hope, all things being well, we'd do it against Southampton in the end of the month. We need 5 points, don't we? We'd love to get a result at Bournemouth, who, obviously form wise are not having the best sort of half dozen games or so. Chelsea, anyone's guess, but you'd then hope that we then face Southampton, one of the worst sides in Premier League history, and get a result and take us past that. Now, people talk about jinxing things. I don't really believe in that. You can talk about the hypotheticals. We'll see. But that'd be nice to do, right? But if, things go off a cliff, then we're not going to do it. We're not going to reach any, we're not going to finish in the top half anyway. So, yeah, I'd say that the points total will be beaten. I think the wins total will be beaten. And I just hope that when those records fall, that we get something to show for it. It's funny because the BBC is talking about, Fulham are 5 points off the Champions League spots, and if they get the Europa League or Conference League, it's not a bad consolation. And I'm like, well, no Fulham fan is talking about anything other than getting Conference League. To be honest, we are looking at 8th, aren't we? Really, because depending on whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, we've got the hardest run in, or we've got the biggest opportunity to make an impact on that race. But judging by the teams that we're playing that are above us are in the top half of the table. But I still think 8th is where we've been all season, on and off. And I think that would be, we'd bite your hand off if you said that we'd finish there at this point.
If we are to get there, Drew, what's your opinion on this? And if you think that we're not quite ready in terms of our, the squad that we've got, and whether we would struggle to keep up with all the fixtures, like what do we need to do in order to get there, do you think? And because there are a few people, people within Fulhamish as well, that, speaking, I guess, off the record, who say that they don't want to get Europe next year because they don't think it will go well effectively, and we're not ready, and they want to put in a really good, push for it next year when we could arguably strengthen across the summer. But do you think we're ready?
No, we're not ready at the moment in terms of players on the ground. We started this season, I think, with 24 first-team squad members. That's not enough, barely enough for a Premier League season of 38 games, let alone throwing in a dozen European games or whatever it is now with the group stages. So we have to pull off a bit of a magician's act in the summer in terms of bringing in bodies while staying in the sort of PSR, FFP, FFS, whatever the regulations are called at the moment. We need to pull off a few magic tricks, but you've got to be smart with that, right? You've got to look at how if it happens, right? We're facing however many 50% more games or whatever it is. We need to bring in quality, but like we're not necessarily having to break the bank for players that we think are going to sort of break into the first 11 in the Premier League. We need to make sure we've got a sufficient amount of quality to be able to rotate through the different campaigns, because we might not need the first 11 that we use in the Premier League in the group stages of the Conference League, judging by some of the quality of the opposition. So you just got to be clever, but I think a lot of action needs to be done in the summer if we do that. I don't know whether the higher ups at the club are necessarily dancing for joy at the thought of getting into the Conference League. I think that there's a lot of work that would need to be done, and I don't know how many people are going to be relishing doing that. But you can guarantee that Marco and the boys will be absolutely champing at the bit to get into that spot. So whether we're ready or not, it's what it's all about, isn't it? What's the point in having these 38 game seasons and trying to finish as high as you can if you want to finish high enough to a point where you don't actually get the rewards?
Yeah, I would have to agree. But I know what you're saying in terms of the Fulham recruitment team sort of thinking, we'd have a real job on our hands. We had a question to this effect, Piers, I'm going to chuck to you. So Matt Wall asks, unlike last year when we had a big overhaul coming, are we at risk of actually having to mainly add players rather than replace this summer? Robertson's obviously the main risk, but if we keep him, which we should, then the first team pretty much all stay. A Tete contract, the main question. So, I mean, yeah, where do you stand on this?
It's a really fascinating summer we're going into, and similar to those promotion campaigns, we won't know what kind of players we're going to be able to attract until we find out where we finish at the end of this season and whether we are keeping Europe in mind or not. I'm a bit worried about some of the contracts coming to an end this year and next year. In particular, if you look on the wings, we've got Nelson obviously going back off loan. Traore's got a 1-year extension but ends this season. Willian's ending this season. Next year, Harry Wilson's done, and Sess at the minute. Obviously, we expect there to be lots of conversations about some of these players, but there's a strong chance that on the wings we're suddenly very short over the next couple of years. And also Kenny Tete, the age-old question. It was great to see him coming back yesterday. Replacing him is going to be really expensive, and that's going to be a really tricky thing. And for us, depending on whether we're moving forwards or just having to renew again, as Marco keeps saying, will be so dependent on whether we can tie these players down to more years. I'm not quite as worried about Robertson leaving. I think he's been such a great player for us and stalwart and just thrives so well in this side. He's doing really well for America, their player of the year. And if you look at the kinds of clubs who would come in for him, so many are playing these inverted fullbacks in different ways, which he can do, but that's not his strength. If you're wanting to play that system, you're not signing Robinson. And I think that's actually really playing into our favour, the evolution of football, so the fullbacks aren't quite the bombing up and down versions that they were. So I'm concerned if we can't get a lot of these extensions together to give us the foundation to really push on and add to the squad, but we won't know until we see how we do in these 7 Cup finals.
Yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? But what a boost that would give us if we could see those contracts start to trickle in towards the end of the season. What a real statement of intent that would be from the club. And yeah, hopefully a few of them would come in. Luke, we've got a couple of questions on Sess now. I'm going to chuck the first one to you. So this is from Graying Sideburns, a friend of the pod, Brian, who asks, based on his run of form lately, should Sess be the starter in the side every week with Adama coming off the bench to run at tired legs, or is it too soon to say that? Now, the theory of Adama coming off the bench to run at tired legs is one that is not the first time we've spoken about on this podcast, but what's your opinion on this? Do you think we should see Sess as a regular starter in this squad?
I'd say on current form, he's better than Traore has been for the last 2 or 3 months. I know that I can't remember which game it was when he put in that lovely cross. And it felt like for a little bit of the season, Traore's end product has improved a bit. But I think Sess he's so natural at being in the right areas to score goals. I think you look back to that to that goal he scored yesterday against Liverpool, and I just don't think Traore is there in the box. I think Traore is probably on the edge of the box still. He might have come out to try and help offer an option for the cross instead of being in that place. So for me, it's got to be Sessegnon. I like the idea of Traore off the bench. I think we've discussed before actually that he seems more effective off the bench than when he starts for us at times. So I think that makes a lot of sense to me, and I could see that happening going forward in this next 7 games for sure.
Yeah, Drew, in part 1, you were sort of piling the praise onto Sess, and obviously it's a story which our Fulham fans are watching with joy. But Joshua Dawes asks, is Sess using Fulham as a platform for another big move? So if this form continues, or if another 6 club comes for Sess, do you think he would leave again? Now it's a very sort of sad questions to try and come across, because I don't think many of us would want to go through that heartbreak yet again, especially after the welcome that he's received. I feel like that would really, really hurt. I may just have to retire from watching football if that were to happen. I would fear for what it would do to Elizabeth as well. But I personally don't see it. Maybe I'm looking at it with rose-tinted glasses, but I think it feels like he's found his home, and it was really appreciating the love that he's getting from the fans. And I can't see it happening, but I mean, what do you reckon?
No, I mean, look, he's got RSI already for the amount of times he's tapped the badge in the last 6 weeks. So there's absolutely no way. There's no way he's going anywhere. Look, he's seen already. Like, if you think about it on a purely human level, right? He's a good lad. He's got a good family, good grounding. Fulham are his club. Nobody begrudged him a move to a club like Spurs when he'd done so well for us, right? Nobody begrudged him. But he was pigeonholed because he played on the left. He was people love it. Like, clubs love a left back because they're a hot commodity, right? Especially homegrown. And then they thought he was a left back, and it didn't work for him. Injuries didn't work for him. He realised the grass wasn't greener, and he got a chance to come back. You can see how much it means to him every time he puts on the shirt now, and whatever he says on socials and all these sorts of things. And you can call it lip service, but I think we all know, if you think about it and you look at it with a bit of perspective, he's happy to be back. And I think what's really good here now is that we've got a mature, stronger, more intelligent player with the bit between his teeth, as I said earlier, ready to put in some performances for the club that he loves. And I think for free, for a £25 million profit, I'd say that's a pretty good bit of business.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's got that point to prove, and Marco's, as he's shown us time and time again, that he has that ability to bring out the best in players. So I think Sess is going to kick on, and we've not seen the best of him just yet. Piers, we've got a question here which sort of relates to where Fulham is positioned within the league, and especially like the way that football media talks about us. He's asked, Bournemouth this, Brighton that, yet we're above them both. Do we have the legs to finish above them? And is this Bournemouth game arguably the biggest of the season for us, as a win would give us a 4-point buffer over the Cherries? Now, there's got a couple of parts to this, but first of all, I just want to address how underappreciated this Fulham side are in terms of the coverage that we see. Now, I think there was an article in the Times that highlighted this after this win, saying that Fulham were the most underappreciated team in the league. Do you agree with that sentiment, first and foremost? Because everyone looks at the Brightons and the Bournemouths and they're the darlings, but actually we're the ones who've stealthily come up and look to be pipping them to the post, hopefully.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And I think people forget how good we are because we decide not to get points against Southampton or Ipswich, who are the best team in football these days. So I think that really helps us. I think going in there without all the hype, the noise, the pressure of you're the expected people to get Europe is really helping. So long may they ignore the fact that we are above Brighton and Bournemouth. And to the second part of that, I think Bournemouth is such an important game. It's a we cannot lose game. If we draw that game, life's good, let's crack through. If we lose that game, suddenly it's still nervy with the various run-ins. So everything's on that. But at the same time, they're coming in, they're the home side, they're the European favourites, they're going to win the Champions League, apparently, according to everyone. So I think it suits us really well to be the underdog team and the underrated team and the team that people aren't quite paying enough attention to, because it means we can go and we can just prove it. We know it within ourselves in terms of the players. They're proving their points week after week after week. So I think it's a really good thing for us, if anything.
Yeah, you think it goes in our favour, this kind of under the radar attitude, Drew, or would you rather Fulham were sort of made a little bit more of a big deal of?
No, I think it only really ends badly for a club when they're the media darlings, and if they don't do anything, or they're only treading at a certain level, then it doesn't end particularly well. Look at Brentford. Everybody was purring over Brentford last year, and now they're sort of languishing in sort of the 12th, 13th vortex of doom that nobody wants to be in, and nobody's talking about them. So, no, I'd much rather go under the radar. Marco Silva's a shit manager, and Sess is shit, and Bernd Leno's shit, and nobody wants any of them. Thanks. Let's just leave us all alone and let us go about our business undisturbed. Thanks.
What do you think it is about this particular Fulham team? I mean, Piers, obviously you mentioned that we do just throw games against, the likes of Wolves and Southampton at home. Not that we lost that game. It was a very drab 0-0. But historically, Fulham had always been the club that everyone sort of had a bit of a soft spot for and wanted to kind of do well. But nowadays, we're the team that nobody really hates, but nobody really likes either. We're a bit of a kind of just meh team. People don't care about us at all. And I've just wondered if you have any theories as to why that is, why we, in this current modern Premier League, why we sit in that kind of meh category that doesn't get any plaudits until we do pull a victory against Liverpool out of the bag.
I think it's because we suddenly started beating all the teams who liked us, all the teams above in that top. We've beat all the teams in the top 6, so suddenly they're a bit annoyed by the fact that this team are actually costing them points and positions. Whereas before they're like, oh, it's Fulham, they're gentle, they beat the bottom few, and they sometimes go up and down. And now we're kind of stamping on their territory a bit, and it's not very nice. So I'm not too upset by the fact people are a bit more meh about us. Because again, it's a useful thing for us, and it shows the progression we're making and the excitement we're making. No one thinks a top 6 side is a meh team who we like them and we don't really care what happens. So it's a really great sign of the progress we're making as a football club, that we are no longer the yo-yo side. We're not just established ourselves as a Premier League side, but we're not just the team everyone sort of fancies. It's a nice day out at the bottom of the table. It's a team who are really pushing and really pissing teams off with the results we're getting against them.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation. Luke, we've got a question here from Harry Saunders, who asks, what 4 games would you say are the must-wins if we were to get Europe? So looking to the fixture list, who we've got coming up.
Bournemouth, Chelsea, Southampton, Villa, Everton, Brentford, City.
Yeah, so if you had to pick 4 of them which you would put down on the must-win category, who would you pick out?
I'd say, Bournemouth for sure. Southampton, just because they're rubbish. We've got to be beating teams like them if we're serious about getting into Europe and actually doing something in Europe. I think Villa, in a way, which sounds weird, but just they're still in that kind of area with us. So to take 3 points off them as well as giving ourselves 3 would be huge. I also looked at, if they somehow beat PSG, that game sits in between the 2 semi-final legs. So we should all be kind of praying that, PSG get 3 players sent off in the first leg of that and they get through, because that will be a massive advantage to us if we can somehow have them in the middle of that Champions League semi-final. And then I was going to say Everton, but let's just say Brentford. Let's beat Brentford at the Lego Stadium on the penultimate weekend of the season and put ourselves into Europe. Wouldn't that be their mope in the last minute that actually meant that we got the playoff final that we won as well? That drives me nuts. Let's beat them at their small stadium and show them that we're the best team in Southwest London. Honestly, get lost.
Oh, it's filling me with joy just even thinking of that as a potential outcome. We'll round off with this final point from Jay Harkensall, who gets in touch to say, how much fun are my wife and I going to have coming over from Australia to watch Fulham versus Chelsea in a couple of weeks, sitting in H6? Yes, I mean, Drew, that is one hell of a commitment to the cause from Jay Harkensall and his wife coming over from Australia. Have you heard of any further journey someone's partaken than that?
Oh my God! I'm hoping it's a longer trip than just for the Chelsea game, because that is commitment, and one that I'm not sure would be worth it. Maybe it would be. I mean, Easter Sunday, H6. It could be a lovely little piece of business, but no, that's a big journey. I thought my dad had it bad yesterday doing rail replacement bus from Bournemouth, but and I was glad they made it worth it for him. But that it pales into insignificance after hearing that. Well, look, as we've been talking about these last sort of 6-7 games and all of the different permutations, and what better way to have after that 12-hour flight or whatever it is nowadays to see us beat Chelsea on Easter Sunday. That would be fantastic.
Let's do the double. Right, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking about that victory. All that's left to do is to name this podcast. Drew, what are you going to go for? What was your favourite 3-word review?
My favourite was from Mike Levy, and it's Scousing Out Europe.
There we go. Let's have it. What a time to be a Fulham fan. Let's enjoy these final fixtures as we reach the business end of the season. Can we do it? I think we can. Right, Luke, lovely having you on, mate.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you very much, Drew.
Thanks as always, Coops.
And Piers, great to have you on. Fantastic debut. I'm sure we'll see you again very soon. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much. Let's smash these 7 games.
Let's do it. Sammy and Co will be back on Thursday. Until then, enjoy the sunshine, have a great week, and come on, you Whites.